Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the podcast. And today I'm going to give my review of AEW's Dynamite. Starting off the evening, we have a contract signing between Mercedes Moné and Britt Baker for their high-profile matchup at All In. Moné comes out to the ring, as well as Baker. Moné grabs a microphone. She mocks Baker. After that, Moné signs the contract. Baker then mocks Moné. She signs the contract as well, making the match official for All In. After that, Moné then asks Baker. She wonders if Baker is all in. Moné promises to walk out at All In as TBS champion. Baker says that she's the gold standard, the foundation of AEW. Baker then talks about being the first woman of AEW. Baker then wants the old Mercedes Moné and doesn't know what happened to the old Moné. And then Baker attacks Camille, pretty much setting up the matchup for All In between Moné and Baker. A couple things I want to talk about with this, man. Number one, this was probably the best part of this storyline, to be honest with you, between Baker and Moné. I mean, the past few weeks between Moné and Baker, I feel like it's kind of been a stalemate, to be honest with you. And to me, for what it's worth, as a fan, I'm definitely looking forward to this matchup. This was one of the matches that I think not just myself, but the fans also wanted to see Moné versus Baker. And this was a high-profile matchup since Moné had signed with AEW. This is definitely one of the matches on my book that I wanted to see Moné have, and we're going to have that at All In. But this was the best back and forth, if you will, between Baker and Moné as far as hyping up this matchup, because the past couple of weeks, to me, it's been a stalemate, man. To me, I think All In this weekend is going to be insane. I definitely will talk more about All In towards the end of the podcast, but I'm definitely looking forward to this matchup. And like I said, this was something between Moné and Baker that had the most heat, if you will, leading up to their matchup at All In. So I'm definitely looking forward to this matchup between Moné and Baker. Moving on from that, we go into our first official match of the night. It is Chris Jericho versus Dynamite Kid Tommy Billington. I thought it was a good match. It was a good showcase by Billington. It was a back-and-forth matchup with Billington keeping the pace of the match. Keith and Big Bill attack Tommy Billington with the referee being distracted. Jericho hits a lion salt on Billington in the middle of the ring. Jericho then quickly applies the walls of Jericho, but the hold is broken. Billington then hits a tombstone piledriver, but doesn't go for the cover. Billington then goes for a diving headbutt, but Jericho counters that headbutt with a code breaker, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match is Chris Jericho. After the match, Jericho grabs a microphone. He mocks Hook. Hook then comes out to the ring. Hook and Jericho get face-to-face, but Big Bill attacks Hook in the middle of the ring. Hats off to Jericho for getting the win in that matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next matchup. It is for the AEW Women's Championship. It is Saraya versus Toni Storm. I thought this was a good match, man. It was a back-and-forth matchup between Saraya and Storm, with Storm keeping the pace of the match. Toni and Saraya then both exchange in the middle of the ring, but Storm hits her signature Storm Zero on Saraya, pins her for the 3, and your winner of the match is Toni Storm. After the match, Mariah May comes out to the ring, and she attacks Toni Storm, pretty much sending a message to Storm leading up to their match at All In. Moving on from that, we have a face-to-face with Will Ospreay and MJF. Number one, the crowd was amazing. I believe the last night they were in Cardiff over in the UK. The crowd was absolutely amazing. You guys, the fans over there in Cardiff, man, they really were the highlight of the show last night, in my honest opinion. The crowd was great. They were chanting Ospreay. Ospreay talks about his journey and what it took for him to get to AEW. Talks about his accolades and what he's done from being in independent shows to working over in New Japan. MJF then talks about selling out arenas, why Ospreay was over in New Japan. MJF then talks about the top brass from AEW and Time Warner wanting MJF to come back sooner than later from injury to clean up Ospreay's mess. Ospreay then praises AEW. Ospreay then mocks MJF. Ospreay says that Tony Khan asked him personally to put on a great match at last year's All In because Tony wasn't confident in MJF's performance in All In. Ospreay then says he wants AEW to go back to what it once was, the foundation of what AEW represents. MJF then wonders who said Ospreay is the best. MJF then mocks the fans. MJF then talks about his accolades and what he's done in AEW. MJF says that the fans loved him until Ospreay showed up. Looks like MJF has a little hostility with Ospreay, a little bit of jealousy. MJF then mocks Ospreay's family. Ospreay then asks Shivani how much would it cost for him, how much a fine would be if Ospreay were to attack MJF. And Shivani tells Ospreay and the crowd last night, that the fine would be $100,000. Ospreay said to hell with it, it's worth it, and Ospreay ends up attacking MJF. But then MJF hits Ospreay with a Dynamite diamond ring, leaving Ospreay a bloody mess in the middle of the ring. Couple things I want to say about this, man. Number one, this was fantastic. This was probably one of the best things about last night between Ospreay and MJF, this face-to-face, man. I mean, this storyline between Ospreay and MJF, I'm definitely anticipating this matchup at All In. To me, I have Ospreay walking out as the new international champion. But to be honest with you, man, this is a high-profile matchup. You know, Ospreay has done fantastic stuff since he's been with AEW. I mean, his career alone has been fantastic. And to me, Ospreay is probably the best wrestler in the world right now, bell to bell. But this is going to be a great match. MJF Ospreay All In. It's going to be great. It's going to be a fantastic matchup. And it just tells a hell of a story, man. MJF comes off, obviously, as the heel, Ospreay being the babyface. Ospreay was immensely over last night in Cardiff, over in the UK, man. The fans were just completely just surrounding themselves around Ospreay. So it was a great moment. Told a hell of a story, and I'm definitely looking forward to this matchup between MJF and Ospreay at All In for the American Championship or International title this weekend at All In. Definitely looking forward to that. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It's for the AEW Continental title. It's Okada versus Claudio Castagnoli. I thought it was a great match. Back and forth matchup between Okada and Claudio. Okada and Claudio both exchange in the middle of the ring, with Claudio applying a sharpshooter on Okada. The hold was broken. Okada then hits a elbow drop off the top rope. Claudio gets up, hits a giant swing on Okada, but then the bell sounds and the time runs out. Match ends in a time limit draw. After that, the Elite show up. Matt says that, asks the fans if they would like 5 more minutes in this match, but Matt tells the fans no. The fans get pissed off, and then the Elite look to attack Claudio, but Darby Allin is here as well as FTR, which gets us into our next matchup, impromptu match. It is Darby Allin teaming up with FTR versus the Young Bucks and Jack Perry. I thought it was a good match, man. It was a back-and-forth matchup between both teams, with Darby and FTR keeping the pace of the match. And Darby ultimately gets the win by hitting a coffin drop off the top rope, pins for the 3, and your winners of the match are Darby Allin and FTR. Hats off to Darby Allin and FTR for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we have the final face-to-face, if you will. Face down, Jesus. Final face-to-face between Bryan Danielson and Swerve, with Nigel McGuinness kind of being the mediator of this final face-to-face between Danielson and Swerve. McGuinness actually has some jabs towards Bryan Danielson. Obviously, there's a little history there between McGuinness and Danielson. McGuinness hypes up Swerve. Swerve then talks about his accolades and what he's done in AEW. Danielson is here. Danielson runs out to the ring, quickly attacks Swerve. Danielson grabs a microphone and says that he is the best wrestler in the world, and that Swerve would almost have to completely dismantle Danielson to get the win in this matchup at All In. A couple things I want to talk about, man, about Dynamite and All In before I get out of here, and some news and rumors, if you will. Dynamite last night was great. I think the show from top to bottom was really good. It was one of the best go-home shows I've seen in quite a while from AEW. And hopefully AEW continues to do that with building up storylines leading up to their next pay-per-views and just their, television programming in the near future. And like I said, Dynamite last night was great. I think the 2 biggest things that I took away from last night was just the build up towards All In. You have, obviously you got the Tony Storm match with Saraya, Mariah May getting involved in that, pretty much hyping up their match. Britt Baker and Monet did a fantastic job getting more heat onto their match and getting fans more invested into that matchup between Baker and Monet, because it should have a lot of investment. This was one of the matches, like I said earlier, that I wanted Monet to have when she joined AEW, and I think Britt Baker is the foundation. She's definitely one of the pillars of AEW, and she was one of the originals in AEW, and then having Monet come in and then aligning herself up with Camille. It's going to be a tall task for Baker to dethrone Monet and become the new TBS champion, so I'm definitely looking forward to that matchup. And then, obviously the other highlight of the night, Bryan Danielson and Swerve in the final face-to-face leading up to their match at All In. And to be honest with you, man, it was just fantastic. Seeing Danielson come out, attack Swerve, give out that mission statement saying that he is the best damn wrestler in the world. And it's hard to argue against it, man. Danielson has had a hell of a career. Hell of a career. From his time in Ring of Honor, time in Japan, time in WWE, obviously. A lot of people got to know who Bryan Danielson who he was once, Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson went over to WWE. A lot of fans gravitated towards Daniel Bryan. But he's had a fantastic run in AEW. A great run, memorable matches, great moments. I remember distinctly the moment that he had, that matchup he had, I believe it was at Grand Slam with him against Kenny Omega. And it was a match that a lot of fans were clamoring for years. No one ever thought that we would see Omega and Bryan Danielson in the same ring together, let alone wrestle against each other. So we got that great moment, and he's had fantastic matches and great moments in AEW. With that being said, I mean, as far as the matchup between Danielson and Swerve, it's going to be a tall task for Bryan Danielson. Obviously he still has a little bit of a neck injury still from injuries that he sustained in other matches and stuff like that. But it's going to be a hell of a moment at All In. And I'm hoping as the fans that watch, and myself included, that we just soak this in, man, because, we don't know if this is going to be Danielson's last ride, his final countdown. Is this the end-all, be-all? Because it's title versus career. Who knows? Will Danielson walk away at All In and fully retire? We don't know. We do not know. But it's going to make for one hell of a moment and a fantastic matchup at All In. I'm definitely looking forward to this matchup. But the other things I want to talk about too, man, and some news that have come out as of late. Ricky Starks. I know I've talked heavily about Ricky Starks and a lot of information and rumors that have been coming out with Ricky Starks. And from what I've gathered and the information that I received from people that I've talked to, it does seem as if Ricky Starks is on his way out. And I mentioned to you guys multiple times in the past few weeks that Ricky Starks was pretty much on the hot track list to go over to WWE. It just seemed like it was almost at a point where it was inedible. Eventually it was going to happen. And to me, it seems like that's exactly where the ship's going for Ricky Starks. I think Ricky Starks is going to be going over to WWE. Do I think he's going to go on the main roster? No. I think Ricky will be going over to NXT. And I think when that might happen, I know NXT has an event coming up here soon with NXT's No Mercy. There's a good possibility that he might show up there. I think there's a high-profile title match there between Ethan Page and Joe Hendry. Doesn't have a whole lot of heat behind it, so that could be a good chance Ricky Starks comes out through that match. Or they wait to bring Ricky Starks into NXT when NXT goes over to Chicago, I believe at the Allstate Arena early October, which they're going to have live from a really big ass arena. So I mean, there's also that possibility of him showing up in Chicago at Allstate Arena or St. Louis, Missouri, again a really huge arena, and really make a name for himself over in NXT. And obviously they're going to get a humongous pop bringing in someone like Ricky Starks from AEW into NXT. I think Ricky Starks in NXT would be great, to be honest with you. I think he would have a great career over in NXT. Absolutely. But that's the news I got on Ricky Starks. I think Ricky Starks is 100% going over to WWE. At this point, I just don't think that... I think his tenure with AEW is coming to an end, and I think Ricky is just ready to walk away and, wipe his hands away from AEW and go over to WWE. And I know some people might be against that, and some people are like, oh, he's a traitor, he's going to go over to WWE. I don't see it that way, man. I mean, I remember seeing Ricky Starks, and I told you guys this a while back ago, that I remember seeing Ricky Starks the first time when he was in NWA Power. And even at that time, the guy had a lot of potential. He had matches with, Trevor Murdoch at the time, I think it was the NWA television title. He was in that tournament for NWA. He was a household name for NWA Power, and Billy Corgan and what he did for Ricky Starks, it was great. He really elevated Ricky Starks and really got his name out there, and obviously it worked because it gave him the opportunity to go over to AEW and have some good matches over in AEW, really make a name for himself and kind of build up more stock, if you will, for AEW, and his stock right now is high. The Ricky Starks stock right now is probably the reason why WWE is looking into Ricky Starks, to be honest with you. And sky's the limit, man. I think WWE and the WWE machine would do great by Ricky Starks. I'm not saying everybody's going to have the Cody Rhodes treatment. I'm not saying that. Because obviously Jay Cargill's not getting that either. But I think they would open the doors for Ricky to come in and really see what Ricky can do. And Ricky can, run roughshod on the NXT roster. And I can definitely see Ricky Starks being a future NXT World Heavyweight Champion. Absolutely. I mean, Ricky Starks is the total package. He has the voice. He's got the physique. He's got the athleticism. He has the agility to really work in that ring. And Ricky Starks he's still really young in the game. And Ricky Starks has a lot of time to build up that craft that he's built over the years as far as him being a pro wrestler. And he can have one hell of a run in NXT as well as the main roster in WWE. The other thing I want to talk about briefly is the AEW's television deal. I know it's a hot topic for a lot of people, myself included. Nobody really truly knows what the hell is going on with AEW and Time Warner. The news that I have received is that so far, I don't know if there's a contract signed yet with Time Warner for a media rights deal yet, or maybe there is, and AEW is keeping it under wraps to try to make that announcement here soon. But what I do know is that, from what I understand and what I've been told, is that pretty much the ball is in AEW's court and Tony Khan's court. And what I mean by that is from what I understand, Time Warner had offered AEW and Tony Khan double from what their original TV rights deal was when they first signed with AEW 5 years ago. So to me, I don't know what the holdup is. I don't know what Tony Khan really wants from Time Warner or what he thinks he's going to get. But my standpoint is the same, and I mentioned this a week or two ago. AEW needs to push storylines. They need to hit a hard reset, and I can't tell you how much they need that. They need a hard reset, and hopefully at All In or after All In, we get that reset. But it needs to be something where AEW is a viable product. And if it doesn't become a viable product anymore, then Time Warner is probably not going to be really invested in putting a lot of money or equity, if you will, into AEW and really have them around for the next 10 years, 15 years. We don't even know if they're going to even last that long. I hope they do. I hope they last for a very long time. But if it becomes a problem where it's no longer a viable product anymore, then I think Time Warner is not going to be invested in the AEW product anymore. And I still believe that Tony Khan, in this new TV rights deal, if there is one, he is going to be on the hot seat to produce good television. Not only for Time Warner, but the fans. Because obviously, regardless of what's going on right now, yeah, All In is their biggest show of the year. But after All In, the TV ratings are still in the toilet. And they progressively keep going up and down and down and up and down. It's not steady. They're not hitting a million in the ratings. It's just not happening. I told you guys a couple of weeks ago, it's 600,000 or a little bit above 600,000 views that they're getting per Dynamite. Where, you look at Raw and SmackDown, they're getting almost 1 million views, and every arena they go to is sold out. So, and I'm not trying to compare apples to oranges, but it's just, if we're looking at it from a rating standpoint, WWE is blowing them out of the water. But AEW has the potential, man. They have the roster, they have the talent, they have endless amount of talent. Especially with All In. I know a lot of people are also overlooking the gauntlet match for this weekend at All In. There might be some returns, man. There might be some debuts, if you will, at this gauntlet match. I know Adam Page announced last night that he will be a part of this gauntlet match, and I know that he's already pretty much got a match booked for himself against Swerve at All Out, which, who knows if Swerve walks out All In World Heavyweight Champion. We don't know. But what I will say is Page is a part of the gauntlet. And that gauntlet match, we might have some new debuts. There might possibly be a Bobby Lashley or Ricochet or Mustafa Ali, who's currently not under contract with TNA. He can also show up and be a part of this gauntlet match. And Mustafa Ali will be a great addition as well to AEW. And I'm hoping we do see Ricochet. I know Ricochet has been rumored to be with AEW for quite a while now since he left WWE. And that he was a free agent. I know he was heavily talked about possibly joining AEW. Ricochet would be a great addition. I know Will Ospreay is trying to recruit Ricochet over to AEW, and they would have one hell of a match. Bring Ricochet in, have him as a heel, sure. Have a little hostility there between Ricochet and Will Ospreay. The match sells itself. But I'm hoping, like I told you guys, to me, Tony Khan and AEW, they need to hit a grand slam coming into All In and out of All In. They just need to hit the ball out of the park, man. And I can't tell you how much of importance that is, because if not, it's going to get stale, man. This is the biggest show of the year for AEW. Next year, AEW All In's not even going to be in London. It's going to be in Texas next year, out of the Texas Ranger Stadium. It's going to be a big, big deal. I know that place is going to be jam-packed, probably completely sold out, being that this is the first All In the States. And I think after that, they're going to go right back out to London again at Wembley. So that place is going to sell out, and it's going to be a great show next year for All In as well in Texas. It's going to be a great event, but they need to hit the iron where the iron's hot coming out of All In this weekend. They need to pull out all the stops. Like I said, I don't even give a shit if we see Shane McMahon at this point, whether he's in the crowd or what, or he comes out during All In. I don't know, but at this point, they need something. They need a shot in the arm, man. AEW needs that immensely. And I'm sure there's more announcements to be made. Obviously, everybody wants to know what's going on with the TV rights deal. And my standpoint's the same. I think if they do sign a TV rights deal with Time Warner and Warner Media, which hopefully they do, that somehow, in some way, that HBO Max or a streaming deal is a part of that deal. I think doing something like that would benefit not only Time Warner, but it would benefit immensely for AEW and Tony Khan to be putting these PLEs or pay-per-views, if you will, on HBO Max. I know some people are like, oh, it's another charge. It's another monthly charge. But it's not like you're just paying for AEW's coverage on the HBO Max app. I mean, you have the availability to watch new movies, TV shows, stuff like that. There's a lot more to offer on HBO Max besides wrestling. And even people that have HBO Max now that might not be too keen on pro wrestling, when they see AEW on there, they're like, oh shit, what's AEW? They'll go check it out. It gets more viewership to the product. It gets more eyeballs on the product, and it's a win-win for both AEW and Tony Khan as well as Time Warner and Warner Media. And I mean, honestly, and that's really what it's turning to as far as not only just television, but pro wrestling at this point. If you guys look at the narrative, was it next year, January 2025, Raw was going exclusively over to Netflix? I mean, that's a big deal. That's a huge deal, not only for Netflix, but for Monday Night Raw and WWE. It's a huge deal. And then you look at other companies, NWA, and what Billy Corgan's doing. Billy Corgan has signed a deal with the CW Network, and NWA Power for a while now has been on the CW Network, which is, again, mainly a streaming service. So, I mean, again, a lot of pro wrestling companies are going that route, and some are not. Some are on, regular television like AEW and Raw and SmackDown for now, but that's where cable television is going to. They're going to the streaming services and the streaming apps, and I mean, there's abundance. I mean, you guys probably know. I mean, I'm sure some of you guys have their, streaming apps and stuff that you guys that pay monthly for, like Max or Paramount Plus or, ESPN Plus, stuff like that. I mean, that's pretty much where cable television is going to at this point. So, and it's something that everybody can do, and everybody can actually have the access to get, when Raw goes to Netflix, I'm sure everybody who has Netflix can get Raw, I'm assuming. So it broadens the horizons for the other audiences that don't really get the opportunity to watch it live. They have the opportunity to watch it live now that it's on a humongous worldwide streaming platform like Netflix, or CW or HBO Max. Anybody can get HBO Max. Anybody can get Netflix. So it's a win-win from a media standpoint and financially standpoint for both companies, for Time Warner and AEW to go to HBO Max. And I'm hoping that's the case. I mean, they have the library, man. I mean, if we're looking at obviously AEW's acquisition of Ring of Honor, and we're looking at all the pay-per-views they've had for the past 5 years and special events, I mean, all that shit can go over to HBO Max. And my thing is, do I think Ring of Honor is a viable product? Absolutely not. I think Ring of Honor is a dumpster fire. With all due respect to fans of Ring of Honor, I was a fan of Ring of Honor at one time too, but I was a fan of Ring of Honor before Tony Khan had purchased the company, because what Ring of Honor was doing before Tony Khan had purchased the company was amazing. I mean, to me, I don't know if you guys are really familiar with PWG, but Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, what they did back in the day was bring in a lot of, independent talent and just put on banger matches, man. Kevin Owens and El Generico. You had Ricochet, Ospreay, Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, all out of this bingo hall, if you will, kind of like ECW in a way. And it really worked and got a lot of fans invested in not only the product, but these individual men and women that wrestled that night. And people made a name for themselves working for PWG, and it was great. Ring of Honor back in the day was kind of that same thing, but it was more production value than what PWG had to present at the time. Ring of Honor was doing arena shows and stuff like that back in the day, and it had worldwide talent walk through those doors. Talent from Japan, talent from other independent companies that would come in that made a name for themselves and just run roughshod on Ring of Honor. And a lot of legends have walked through the door of Ring of Honor, and future Hall of Famers. I mean, Seth Rollins, Bryan Danielson, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn. I mean, that's just to name a couple wrestlers that wrestled for them. Eddie Guerrero even wrestled for Ring of Honor at one point. CM Punk did as well. So, I mean, we're not getting that now with the current model of Ring of Honor. And I know Tony Khan wants to rebrand Ring of Honor possibly as AEW Ring of Honor. I told you guys this, I think, a week or two ago. You can name it whatever the hell you want, but the product's still going to be the same if you don't change it. So it's still going to be a dumpster fire. But when it pertains to HBO Max, they can also put Ring of Honor's product on HBO Max to kind of try to make it into a viable product, to get people invested in it. Because right now, Ring of Honor is not even on television. It's not even on YouTube. You had to pay, I think, $6 a month just to watch Ring of Honor television, which $6 is $6. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's super expensive or super cheap, but if you're paying the $6, you don't really know what you're getting. And at the same time, too, it's not something that I think a lot of people are going to be truly, fully invested in. To be honest with you, I mean, even speaking on the topic of Ring of Honor, and I hate saying this for the fans of Ring of Honor, but I think Athena, a.k.a. Ember Moon, is just wasting her talents away being over at Ring of Honor. Athena should be over in AEW. Hands down. Absolutely. And I know they're trying to do whatever they can to revamp that brand. I know they had Samoa Joe there as world champion and television champion, and Claudio was the world champion at one point. I think Mark Briscoe is the current world champion for AEW. I mean, for Ring of Honor. But it's not a Bible product, man. Not a lot of people even want to cover Ring of Honor, nor do they really want to watch Ring of Honor. So, as far as Ring of Honor is concerned, yeah, I would definitely entertain the possibility of them going over to HBO Max if that was a possibility and Time Warner was all for it. Then if I was Tony Khan, yeah, I would do that. Absolutely. Just like putting the pay-per-views on HBO Max. Absolutely. Make that your streaming service hub, if you will. That's exactly what I would do, especially if this, when it pertains to the new TV talks and contract talks. Absolutely. I'm hoping HBO Max was hopefully at least mentioned in those talks between Tony Khan and the executives over at Time Warner. I mean, at this point, it has to have something to do with HBO Max. It has to. But all in all, man, I mean, like I said, Dynamite was a great show. It was not a bad show at all. Had a lot of interesting parts of the show, a lot of build towards All In, which that's exactly what they need to do with the go-home shows leading into these pay-per-views, and that's exactly what they did last night. So again, hats off to Tony Khan for booking a show correctly and having build more towards All In. All In's looking like a fantastic show. I mean, I know a lot of people are going to be anticipating a lot of matches, especially the Bryan Danielson versus Swerve match, because it is title versus career. Is this the last hurrah, if you will, the final countdown to the career of Bryan Danielson? I think that's everybody's going to be wondering what's going to happen in that matchup, and everybody's going to have their eyes glued to the screen when that match and that bell rings between Bryan Danielson and Swerve for the AEW World Championship. But with that being said, man, this is my review of AEW's Dynamite. I hope you guys are out there staying safe. Be careful, and remember,